6 years old. I was 6 years old when my family moved here from Swanton, Vermont to work in the marble business. I remember feeling an incredible emptiness inside, having to leave behind the only world I ever knew. But I was assured that something special awaited me in my new home. It took 10 years, but at the age of 16, I finally discovered that something special. That someone special. You see, that's the day I saw her. I was traveling over the bridge from South Glens Falls by foot when I wandered up Warren Street, past number 71. I'd gone this way before. I knew that if I took the right turn down the path towards the river, I could find the bridge home. Well, that fateful day, I saw a new home. And on the porch, there were children playing. And on the fence post was a sign that said, Dr. N. Edson Sheldon, M.D. Well, you see, there were mostly small homes and shacks on Warren Street where the local workers lived. But people had been moving into the area. Rich people. Well, as I passed that home, I saw this beautiful young lady, no more than 12, and she waved to me. I saw her face. It was the face of an angel. Well, I didn't know what to do, so I ran. And from that day forward, I wrote a diary about her. It took almost a year before I went back to that fence, and she came up. I don't remember exactly what I said, but when I got home, I wrote down everything she said.
I see how you look at me when you walk by here.
I don't know what you mean.
Of course you do. You love me.
I don't even know your name.
Yes, you do. I watch you as you start home, and I read my name, Elizabeth, on your lips.
She was right. It was a small town, and everybody knew Dr. Sheldon. Everybody knew that my angel's name was Elizabeth.
You know too much.
I know everything about you, except what your name is.
It's Stephen. Stephen DeForest Hopkins.
Well, Stephen DeForest Hopkins, you and I will have a very long engagement, won't we?
And that's what happened. We'd meet every Sunday for a short 30-second conversation. Her parents began to notice, but she paid no notice. She'd tell me when to come back, and I'd be there. By the time she was 16, I was almost 21. And I could think of no one but my Elizabeth. You see, she was a very proper girl, and her parents would let her go off with friends to church meetings and the like as long as they were well chaperoned.
We were to meet for an RC meeting, and we were going to sit together. Her parents went off to church, and instead of going in with the rest of the youth, we snuck off for a 3-hour carriage ride. 3 short, very short hours, but very bright, happy hours because we were together.
I put his arm around me, and I rested my head upon his breast, with his dear hand nestled so loving in my own.
Again, I heard an accent so low and soft and so musical, her voice telling me how much she loved me.
I love you.
Dr. Sheldon forbade Lizzie from those meetings again. But a few months later,
I had hoped Lizzie would be there, but she told me she'd not think it possible. So I tried hard not to make up my mind. 'Twas all for the best not to be blue and disappointed she could not come. 'Twas no use, though. I could not help feeling it was a bitter disappointment.
by and by our friend Addie came, and said a gentleman wanted to see me.
I knew in a moment what it meant, and I went out of the room with my heart in my mouth.
That was pretty smart of me. He found me upstairs. We were alone together all the time. I went to him and sat upon his knee, with my arms about his neck and my head upon his breast.
It was the happiest hour of those we spent with each other.
It was that night that I told him of my fears for the future. I fear that cloud that hangs over my life. I think and fear sometime that no one will ever love me, and that if we ever married, that she would grow tired of me and cease to love me.
That I would tell her with words that should burn into her memory, that I would always cherish her and never, never cease to love her. God help me to prove it to her in my life.
This went on for many years, these quick moments of passion. I knew I had to wait till she was 21, but when she was 19, we snuck off to our friend Hattie's house. And as we walked home, we passed the cemetery at dusk.
I sat down upon the steps, and she came to me, nestled in my arms, her arms wrapped around my neck, and her head upon my breast, like a little child, weary and tired.
We talked, and as we turned to come away for a moment, we were clasped in each other's arms in a fond embrace. And then we turned homeward, and then she told me, in low, sweet words, looking to me so trustingly, so kindly.
Now, DeForest, I promise to marry you whenever you come for me in 2 years.
Our lips met again, and the promise was sealed.
I felt such an assurance that Lizzie would finally be all my own, when each night I would wrap my arms around her dear form. She would sink to sleep, her head pillowed upon my breast, when it would be my privilege alone to watch over her.
Our love and ardor would even overcome us in church. Why, we would pass messages to each other by writing them in a book and putting it back and forth to one another.
I took a seat by her side in the still quiet twilight. We were together, near each other. Our hands were clasped, and now and then she would bend over them, pressing her lips upon my hand or resting them against her warm, soft cheek. She gave me my book. I wrote in it, and she returned it to me the next day at Sabbath church service.
I felt so alone that Sabbath eve, so weary and lonely, with my head bowed down, my gentle eyes all filled with tears.
Her dear soft hands clasped so tightly, keep back the sobs and low, mournful words of grief.
How I wish he was near me, with me then.
That I would have folded her in my arms, pressed her against my heart, kissed away all the tears, cheered and comforted her. Oh, when shall this be my right? When shall this be my privilege? Would it were mine now?
It became very obvious that Dr. Sheldon was very displeased. I was a man with no future, and running in and out of his house were young physicians doing study with him. One, named Dr. Charles Roberts, was from a very good family. He couldn't even get Lizzie to talk to him. I was offered a job down in West Troy working for Roy Knitting Mills. The money was good. I could save for the wedding, but it meant long periods of time away from my Lizzie. So the night before I left, I went to the house on Warren Street to pay a visit on Dr. Sheldon to ask if I could formally call on Lizzie. Well, he raised a frightful upset. He told her that she could see me anytime she wished, but I was not to come there. Further, he said, if she found a home she preferred over his, she could leave straight away. He knew that he couldn't do anything once she turned 21, but he made it clear that she would be cut loose and she could expect nothing from him. Well, she told him she did not wish to leave home, only for the next afternoon. After 9 months at West Troy, Lizzie turned 21 in February of 1860, and we planned our wedding for June of that year. It had been a very long courtship.
I wrote to DeForest to update him and said, "Have been talking with Ma today about your coming again. I do not think they like the idea of us being married soon very well, for Pa would have preferred to have been absent when we were married. I think as it is, he will go to the church, but he will not consent to give me away. Of course it would not look well for anyone else to do, but must be dispensed with altogether. Ma says it often has been done, and she thinks it'd be the best way for us to get along with everything as smoothly as possible. I am sorry that Pa still seems to feel rather sorely upon the subject of our union."
She was like all other brides, worried about detail. Why, she even worried about my hat. She didn't like me in a hat. A cap? Yes. A hat? No. But with the hat, we must follow fashion, she said. The wedding went off without a hitch, and we moved away as newlyweds to Baltimore for things to cool off at home. We moved back in 1867 to a more congenial family life. I always found work once on the railroad. And believe it or not, I even worked in Dr. Sheldon's pharmacy as a druggist in 1874. Of course, it was after he died. I finished my career as a very well-respected bookkeeper. Lizzie and I moved to the home on Warren Street after Dr. Sheldon's death, and we had 4 children, 4 boys. 2 of them died young, one at 8 months and the other at 2 years. Albert and lived to adulthood, and each had a daughter. Albert's was named May Davis Hopkins, and Charles's Mary Sheldon Hopkins. I became ill in 1915 with what was diagnosed as heart disease following grippe. Albert and Charles came to visit in April, and I died May 1st, 1915. Albert was traveling on business to Europe and learned of my death by ship to shore. He was traveling on the Lusitania, which went down May 7th, and he was lost. Elizabeth was left to mourn both a husband and a son. She died in 1919 at the age of 70, and my diaries were passed down to my family. And you've heard today my actual words of love and devotion for my Lizzie. Good day.